Hello, Facebook world. This is Kylie Larsen with 4011 Learning, and I am going live today for my webinar, 3 Steps to Test Success. So I'm live with you guys. You won't be able to see my presentation, but you will be able to see all of the fantastic information, hints and hacks and tips and tricks that I share with those that are joining the webinar. So thank you guys so much for being here. And if you'll allow me just a moment to share my screen, we will get started. Okay, so trying to boil down the most important things about success on test to a 30-minute webinar is a pretty good challenge for a teacher that's taught for over 20 years. So when it came down to it and I had to just choose what I thought were the 3 most essential things, I came up with confidence, preparedness, and focus. So that is what we are going to talk about tonight. And that is really the reason why I designed the EOG training camps that are coming up this weekend for upper elementary school students, was that it's not too late. And I, as a teacher, I sometimes would think, by the end of the semester, if they haven't gotten it now, they're not going to get it in the last few weeks. However, working as a tutor, I have seen kids make a turnaround and make dramatic improvements in short amount of time. So I don't think that a 6-week program right before EOGs is, an attempt that will be made in vain. I do think that students can make tremendous leaps and bounds even in a short amount of time leading right up to the test. So that's a little bit has changed for me in that regard, going from teacher to tutor. So we're going to start with some things that I have heard from parents many, many times. My child knows the material, but they always struggle on tests. They get so anxious that they shut down. My child rushes through the test, or they constantly second guess themselves and they will erase a correct answer and choose a wrong answer. So if that sounds familiar to you, I just want you to know that all of those are common concerns for parents. And so we're going to address some things that should help with that. All right, so again, 3 steps to test success. We're going to talk about confidence, strategy, and focus today. And so the first step is confidence. And confidence is all about how your child views themselves as a test taker or as a learner. There are plenty of children out there that view themselves positively as a learner, but view themselves negatively as a test taker. And so we want to make sure that we fix that issue. So when a student believes in their abilities or they believe in the plan that they have, this is going to set them up for success. So how do we do that? Well, before the test, we make sure that the students have a personalized plan. And I say personalized for a very specific reason, and I'll get back to that in just a moment. But confidence definitely comes from knowing what to do when you are faced with a challenge. And so a clear plan removes any doubt. It's going to build trust, and you're going to feel confident as a result. Well, why do we need a personalized plan? Why can't every kid just use the same plan presented by a teacher or parent or tutor? And the reason for that is, of course, all students are different and they all have their different strengths and weaknesses. So I want to give you a couple of examples. Earlier this school year, I started working with a student that was having difficulty with cold read scores. And what I mean by that is to be like a reading comprehension test. You've never seen the passage before. You've never read it. You've never seen the questions. That's why it's called a cold read. So you read the passage, answer the questions. She was doing great in all other aspects of her reading class. It was just these cold reads that were tripping her up. So we began to work together, and my focus for her was for her to understand the passage thoroughly as she was going through it. So we really didn't talk about questions that much. We actually talked about what would her strategies be to understand the test. And so I gave her specific ways to summarize and paraphrase what she was reading, to put it into one word or phrase that she could jot down. And honestly, it was only a few weeks later, maybe a month later, she was showing me her first 100 on a cold read. So again, that goes back to the proof of kids can really improve and turn things around in a short amount of time. She just needed that plan for her that addressed her needs specifically. Another student with the same issue maybe would need a plan that addressed more understanding what the questions were asking or finding text evidence for answers. So that's again why I say personalized plan. Let's think about math for a second. A lot of students struggle with word problems. Maybe some don't, but a lot of students do struggle with word problems. So a student having a specific plan for approaching word problems, for example, one plan is to read the question, draw the situation out, and then you write your equations of how you're going to solve it step by step. Another way of approaching word problems is to, let's say, you circle all the numbers, you mark out all the information that you don't need, and you underline the question. So every word problem you're going to approach the same way, and it's going to help you feel confident in your ability to address those word problems. All right, so let's think about what to do during the test. So during the test, to stay confident, I want students to make sure that they don't allow themselves to remain stuck on one problem too long, okay? And I can give you a personal example of this. I know that when I was taking tests, and I'm talking about all the way up to college entrance exams, if I would get stuck on a problem, I would circle it or mark it, skip it, and come back to it later. And I cannot tell you how many times that later on in the test, some information either triggered the understanding of the previous question I couldn't figure out, or it gave me the information I needed for the previous question I couldn't figure out. But there is nothing that will kill confidence faster than remaining frustrated on a question that you're stuck on and you can't figure out. So we are going to skip it, and we are coming back to it later. And after the test, how do we maintain confidence? Well, this is when we utilize something that is a very common phrase these days. We utilize our growth mindset. And we remind ourselves that this test was one moment in time. It is not our entire story. It is not a definition of our worth or our potential. It was a learning experience. We remind our students that they should be proud of doing their best, and they should use any problems that they had as learning experiences for the next time. So we're going to encourage reflection, resilience, and knowing that things can just get better from there. All right. Even if the test doesn't go the way that we want to, we have a growth mindset. And I'm going to talk a lot about growth mindset in a little while. Okay. So step 2, we've got our strategy. So strategy is kind of the thing that moves you from the preparation to the execution. Okay. Knowing what to do. I alluded to strategy a little bit before because we want to know what our strategies are before the test, but then of course we want to utilize them during the test. So how do we use strategy to the best of its ability to help us before the test? The way we do that is we practice like we're going to play, just like in sports. You want to practice the right way. If you are taking a timed test, you want to practice with a timed test. If you are maybe awarded points for getting things correct, but maybe, I know when I was taking the SAT, we would be instructed to maybe skip a certain number of questions because it could actually help us on our score. Well, if that's true, then you want to practice that way and know what your plan is. Another really big part of strategy is understanding what's being tested, first of all. So if you go online for, say, the state of North Carolina, you can find an outline that tells you which standards are tested. First of all, did you know they don't test all standards? They don't test all standards. So it lets you know which standards are tested and what percentage of the test is those standards. So yeah, that would be very valuable information to have. And you want to figure out the particular student's strengths and weaknesses. So I think about math as a good example of this. If you have a child, say, in 5th grade, and they are like 80% accurate on most of their skills, but on fractions, they're like 50-50. Well, fractions, first of all, is a huge part of that test in our state anyway. And secondly, we've got to conserve energy. We have got to take the load off of our brains. We cannot afford to just practice things we already know. That is stealing our energy. That is just putting pressure on our brains. We got to stop that. We're going to figure out where our weaknesses are, and that is where we're going to use our energy to practice, analyze mistakes, figure out how to correct those. So be very strategic about that before the test. There is something called cognitive load. It's sort of a educational, psychological term, but it just means when your brain just gets tired. Too many things to practice, too many things to think about. And the best thing you can do, especially right up until a big test, is reduce cognitive load for a student. Let them focus on what they really need to be focusing on. All right, so during the test, in order to use strategy, we are going to make sure that we eliminate answer choices. It's a great strategy. It automatically increases a student's chance of getting a question right. So how do we do this? Well, with reading, one of my favorite tips, I always like to have my students predict the answer before looking at the answer choices. I think this is something that people that are naturally good test takers will do, but that maybe not all of us think about. So read the question, predict what you think the answer is going to be. If you look at those answer choices right after that and one of them stands out as like, oh wow, that's super close to what I said, that's probably one to at least say maybe two. And then if there are answers that are way off from that, you are pretty safe to eliminate those. They're unrelated, they're extreme. They talk about just one little detail in the story and not address the question. So that's my reading tip. Now for my math tip, it is to estimate, then eliminate. So if you have a problem, say you are adding decimals, if you can estimate those decimals and then add them and just get a ballpark figure, you can probably look down, and if your estimate was 12 and one of the answer choices is 100, then you can probably eliminate that choice because it just doesn't make sense with that estimation. So I love estimate, then eliminate. And for math, I also love, does it make sense with the question? Like, would it make sense that a teacher would have 50 people at a table versus 5 people at a table? Those are the sorts of things that we can think about when we are eliminating test answer choices, and it really does, really is a powerful strategy to use. Okay, so how do we implement this idea of strategy after the test? So what I like to focus on with kids is what worked. Let's stay in the positive. Let's not dwell on anything negative. What are the strategies that helped you succeed? What did you do during the test that you are proud of? You know, help your student recognize their strengths so that they can build on those strengths. The best thing that we can do, especially for our younger students, but for all students really, because I'll just stop right here and say, all students of all ages deal with test anxiety. They deal with how they view themselves as a result of how they perform on test. And, you know, I always allude to our younger students in many of my talks online, but this affects students of all ages. You know, it's really one of the reasons why I developed the EOG training camps, because I want to give students a more positive perspective in thinking about testing. So after the test, we are going to always emphasize doing our best. Did we do our best? Did we use our strategies? And have we grown from the beginning of the year to now? Those are the 3 most important things to emphasize after the test as far as thinking about strategy. All right, so step 3 is focus. And this is probably the toughest one for lots of folks. Whether you deal with executive function issues or have ADHD or not, these long standardized tests are a drain to the brain. They are just, it is difficult to stay focused, and it's difficult to keep your attention focused on, you know, the job at hand. And so how do we help our children manage their attention, block out distractions, and, you know, stay focused on the goal? So I tell my students that you can train focus just like you train a muscle. And real quickly, I'll share with you one little strategy I use with them. It is so simple. It is called focus, notice, refocus. So you can do this anywhere, anytime. Pick something around the room to focus on. Okay, I have my item I'm focusing on. Now, at the minute I notice that I am thinking about something else or I'm looking somewhere else, I'm going to notice it and then I'm going to refocus. Now, you can use like a timer to build your ability to focus based on time. But even if you practice focus, notice, refocus in the middle of a test, that's going to be tremendous in keeping you from wasting time daydreaming. So we want to make sure that we stay focused. So let's talk about before, during, and after the test, what helps us focus. Well, one thing before the test that we can do to help us focus is to know what to expect. This is wonderful for test anxiety as well. But if we know what to expect, we know what the test format is going to be, we know whether it's timed or not, we know what sections we're going to have, we know how long to take on each section. That is going to allow us to not worry about what's coming up. That's one thing that could distract us. So it's going to allow us to focus better during the test. All right, so now we're in the middle of the test. How do we stay focused? The biggest thing here is to stay in your lane and run your race. It's so hard to keep kids from worrying about, oh no, okay, who's finishing first? How many more people are still working? And we really have to emphasize to them, hey, listen, now all of these tests have so many rules, like you can't take out a book. There's so many, some places you probably maybe can take out a book or a magazine or have a piece of paper, but the truth is, everybody has to sit in their chair quietly until the testing session is over. So students don't need to worry about they're holding somebody up, or, other kids are going to get frustrated with them. Really want students, and this goes back to confidence also, have that confidence that, look, doing my best might mean taking every last second on this test, and that is okay. That is what I deserve to be able to do. So we're going to stay in our lane. We're going to run our own race. We're going to not pay attention to those around us and let that distract us or worry us. Super important for during the test. All right, so I told you I was going to come back to growth mindset. So how do we stay focused after the test? Well, we stay focused after the test by continuing to bring in that growth mindset. So yes, after the test, we can also reflect on maybe what distracted me. Where did I find my attention? When was I daydreaming? When did I get sleepy? Those sorts of things, and use those to inform us for the next test we take down the road. So we're learning every day. So we're going to learn from that experience. And we're also going to use growth mindset on what helped me focus. What strategies really worked for me so that I can use those again next time and I can build on those. And I wanted to stop here and just talk about growth mindset for a second because it is so important. If you have a child, and I happen to have a child, that deals with failure in a very negative way, gets very upset at themselves, blames themselves for a lot of things, hates to make mistakes, that sort of thing. I actually used to be a lot like that. I have learned in my advanced age a lot about growth mindset and given myself a huge amount of grace. And I want you as parents to look up famous failures. I went earlier and did this, and I found like a list of 30 famous people that had tons of failures before they had success. And share these with students. This is so important to know. Like, for instance, the Wright brothers. Before their first successful flight, they had 7 planes that they crashed multiple times. And they even had one of their planes that would go the opposite direction they were trying to steer it or direct it to go. I know many people know the story of Michael Jordan, who in 10th grade tried out for his varsity basketball team and was cut and had to go back down to JV and make the best of that, and then becomes arguably the best basketball player ever. I went and looked up a few quotes related to failure. I found one from Elon Musk. Failure is an option here. If we are not failing, we are not innovating enough. From Lionel Messi, it took me 17 years and 114 days to become an overnight success. And then there were a couple of quotes from Jordan. One was about like how many shots he had missed, how many times he had been trusted to make the game-winning shot and missed that, and that basically his success was the culmination of a lot of failure too. And he said, I can accept failure. Everyone fails. What I can't accept is not trying. And then I saw a famous female music artist had a tattoo that said, never a failure, always a lesson. So you go back and you can see stories of like Walt Disney, who tried for decades to get the rights to make the movie Mary Poppins, and he never gave up. I mean, there's just so much out there that can encourage students. And honestly, at 46 years old, starting my own business, I am just now learning some of these lessons about it's okay to fail because it's the only way to learn. You're going to just keep going, keep doing it, and you're going to keep getting better. So that was my little soapbox on growth mindset. So to sum it all up, 3 steps to test success come from confidence, strategy, and focus. Now, your child is completely capable of mastering all of these skills and approaches to test taking. However, I'm a parent, and I completely understand that it is not always easy as a parent to help your child prepare for something, give your opinion on the best way to give something. I tell people all the time, I am a certified reading specialist with 2 children who do have struggles reading, and one of which will not listen to anything that I try to tell them in terms of helping them with their reading. So, I mean, I even send him to other teachers and tutors for help in reading. So if all of this sounds great, but you're thinking, okay, as a parent, this is going to be really tough to help my child through all of this, then I have the solution for you. And the solution for you is our EOG training camps. We have one now these are for 3rd through 5th grade. This is our first year, so we're going to start with upper elementary and build from there. We have one for reading, one for math, and one for science. And if you are looking at the screen, I know my Facebook folks can't see the screen, but those of you that are with me on the webinar, if you're looking at the screen, you will see that we have our, I teach the 4011 reading playbook. So we teach how to read the passage carefully, how to think of the main idea or the gist, how to track those ideas, how to identify question types. We've got green questions, yellow questions, and red questions. So we teach that strategy. We teach strategies on eliminating tricky answers. We teach strategies on how to recognize context clues and what different clues exist out there, like explanations, examples, cause and effect relationships, descriptions. We're going to discuss poetry strategies. We're going to discuss fiction passage strategies, informational text strategies. And I have 1 week, it looks like we are looking at the 5 most common trap or trick answers. So answers that are too specific, too broad, they're true, but they don't answer the question, they're not in the passage, or they're partly true, but they're not the best answer. So we are really honing in on strategy for these camps. The kids have been getting content all year, and I'm doing some content, but they've been getting that all year. And I know as a former teacher, you feel so pressed for time, you just can't cover it all. So if you focus on the content and you maybe miss some of the strategy, this is a really good fill in the gap kind of thing for that. All right, so let's look at what we're doing in our math camp. We have a word problem play. So if you see there, every week. So math is a little different from reading. Reading camp, we are giving a strategy each week and kind of adding, layering, strategy each week. Math camp is a little different, where math camp, really, most of the strategies are taught up front and then used throughout. So we have a word problem strategy. We have steps that you take with each answer. Read the problem, choose the operation, solve it step by step, check your answer. We have why estimation can help you. Estimation can help you predict the answer, avoid mistakes. It can help you save time. And Again, all of those strategies you see on the screen, call the play, estimate, eliminate, solve, check. These are all things that we're talking about throughout the entire 6 weeks. So, EOG training camps. 6 sessions to ace the test. When is this? It starts this Sunday. Each session is a different time on Sunday. Who is going to be leading the sessions? We have certified teachers for all 3 camps. How are we going to be doing this? These are virtual camps. So it will be on the computer, and it will be best if students can use either a laptop or a tablet. A tablet works just fine. So what? Why are these camps important? Again, as a tutor, I have learned students can truly make strides in a short amount of time. These are short sessions, once a week for 6 weeks, but they are designed to make a big impact. Other reasons why this is a good idea. If you are looking for support for your upper elementary child in North Carolina. And these work for all tests, I believe, but I'm from North Carolina and used those standards to look at to create the program. But students, again, we discussed earlier, will often listen to others better than they listen to parents. They will often understand and something will click with them when one adult says it in a little bit of a different way. So even their teacher, I'm sure, is fabulous and has wonderful ways of teaching things. When I was a teacher, I used to always send my students to another teacher for review. I would ask if we could switch during review because I thought if another teacher could say something in a way that helped students remember it better, then great. They could get it from multiple voices and perspectives. We're going to talk about having a good perspective. We're teaching all kinds of things in these camps. Breathing techniques, grounding techniques to calm you down if you're nervous or anxious. It's just, we have really put a lot of thought into these. So, you can go to www.forty11-learning.com and all the information to sign up for the camps is there. Now, bonus time. If you sign up your child for a camp by Friday, you're going to receive a free one-to-one student success coaching call with me for your child that you just need to use by August 31st. And if you sign up for more than one camp, you can use the code CAMP26 for a 20% discount. And if you just need extra support for your child in the form of academic tutoring, or in the form of success coaching, but not anything that's necessarily test related, I would love for you to book a free consultation with me, and you can also do that at the website, or you're welcome to reach out to me on social media, or you can email support@forty11learning.com. Okay, that was it, and that was a lot. I hope that there were things there that can help you with children of all ages facing testing situations. If you need any support from us, please reach out. And I guess I will see you guys the next time I am out here on social media or YouTube sharing information about student success. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining me.